Hello, I'm Morris Ruddick. We've been talking about Jewish business secrets. In our last session together, we began talking about our gifts. God gives gifts to men. There are natural gifts and there are spiritual gifts. When a person applies excellence and masters their gift, it releases creativity and opportunity. During our time together today, I'm going to expand upon what I've discussed about our gifts and talk about how our gifts become essential in mapping out our destinies. In my own life, I have a natural gift as a consultant. I'm a problem solver, a planner, and writer. Among my spiritual gifts are those of a teacher and the prophetic. I'm also a leader. So together with God's guidance, making Him my senior partner, these were the factors that began to converge to map out the pathway of my destiny as the employment of my gifts created opportunity for my life purpose. As a young man, I had chosen the military as my career. It was a career with a purpose. It involved a cause and had become my calling. Yet, when I had roughly 6 years of service in this career, I came to faith and realized there was a higher dimension to my calling, to my destiny. It involved serving the one who created it all. My priorities became refocused on reaching for this higher dimension of my destiny. A year and a half later, I had resigned from the Marines, enrolling at Oral Roberts University to prepare for this new purpose for my life. As I approached the conclusion of my time of preparation in academia for God's plan for my life, I was in prayer, and the Lord spoke a very dramatic word to me about my future. The short version was that I was going to become a consultant and would be entering the business world. At the time, I really did not have a realistic grasp of what a consultant was. I had heard of Peter Drucker, who at the time was a renowned expert in business. But even though I knew God was leading me, I otherwise, frankly, was a little naive about what lay before me. I also did not have the training in business to be a consultant. However, I had these gifts that I've mentioned, and I had this calling, which God had told me was going to be as a consultant. So as I approached the end of this time of academic preparation, I had completed special studies in the Bible, as well as all of my coursework for a graduate degree in media management. Nevertheless, despite my military experience in leadership and planning, I had no training or experience in business. Those factors combined to make me realize that I really had better learn how to depend on God in this new arena I was entering. So upon completing my graduate program, I encountered a job opportunity that seemed to fit strongly with the investigative research orientation that had been such a key part of my graduate studies. Although I was in over my head in this new job, I took one day at a time and began learning the trade. It was several months after working in this position that I realized the function of this firm was that of consulting. Almost 3 years later, having mastered the tools of this profession, the Lord gave me a very strong word about it being time to start my own business. Here again, I didn't have any background on how to start or run a business, but I knew what it meant to depend on the Lord, and I knew how to hear His voice. I've always been a man of action, and being convinced that God was guiding me, I took steps of faith and started my own business. Despite that, My first year of business was grueling. In leaving my former employer, it was a point of honor that I not take any of his clients with me. So I began by borrowing money on our home to support ourselves as I began this new venture. I ordered a new phone, along with some professional business cards and stationery, and purchased a good electric typewriter. This was before the days of computers, and I wrote a lot of introductory letters, one by one, on an IBM Selectric typewriter. I made a lot of phone calls. God gave me a strategy of giving presentations on the state of the industry for the clients and industry I was targeting. I sold one project during all of that first year, and although my client was happy, my banker scolded me because he felt I should have priced the work at 3 times the amount I had charged. At the end of that first year, I had gone through all the money I could borrow, and I had a big stack of bills on my desk. Nothing seemed to be moving in terms of getting the contracts needed to pay the bills. It seemed I had done everything I had known to do, and my phone was silent. I was beginning to wonder if I had missed something the Lord might have been trying to have me do. The reality was that unless God intervened, I was about to fail. But some things take time, and in business, timing more often than not is in God's hands. It was at that point, while in prayer one morning, that I had a very dramatic realization that I had come to a time in which my business was about to start growing. With no evidence to support this perception, it was simply that I knew that I knew that I knew. Some have told me that this perception was God giving me a gift of faith to accompany the steps of faith I had been taking. Then in that next week, from the many presentations I had made over the last several months, I received requests to write proposals for 6 contracts. 3 of them were approved and started almost immediately. The challenge from that point was in keeping up with the growth. We grew to have offices in 3 U.S. cities and 25 full-time employees. Most of our clients were multinational firms, with a number of them being internationally based. Our competitors were some of the most prestigious names in the consulting industry, like Arthur D. Little and Company. In many ways, we were like a young David facing some real industry Goliaths. We worked to give our clients the very best value for their money. We were good at what we did. Our clients came back for more. The business we built revolved around my combined natural and spiritual gifts, which I trained and mentored my employees in doing. My spiritual gifts of teaching, the prophetic, and leadership, all combined to undergird the authoritative, research-based market planning and forecasting consulting work we did for our clients. There's another phase to my career that has as its focus the entrepreneurial startup program that I now take around the world. It had a very inauspicious start after serving as a consultant to major corporations for 30 years. Yet, since its start, we've conducted our seminars and advised purposeful community builders in almost 24 nations around on the ways Jews have excelled in business over the centuries. The same natural and spiritual gifts with God at the helm have been in operation with this program. So far in this series on Jewish business secrets, we've touched on the foundations, the model, and the gifts. I've noted that the pertinent ancient foundations included the identity Jews retain as a culture. This identity impacts the uniqueness of community, as it has endured and prospered many times against much adversity over the millennia. The self-sufficiency operating within Jewish communities embraces high standards and imparts the basis for future generations to advance. In the Jewish community, what we have just taken a brief look at, the importance of nurturing and developing the gifts, is passed on from one generation to another, along with high moral standards and making God the senior partner. These foundations have resulted in creating a society of leaders. Although the form of leadership does not conform to the way most within the world view leadership, leadership involves power. But within the world we live in, there is righteous power and there is corrupt power. The Jewish means of employing power, which was elaborated on by Jesus, has its focus on good overcoming evil. As we consider these factors, we have touched the heart of Jewish culture. I've shared about Gandhi's response of loving the teachings of Jesus, but rejecting Christianity because he never met a Christian that he felt truly practiced these teachings. Gandhi's response was due to the culture of the Christians he had met. Jewish culture foundationally is Eastern, whereas the overriding culture of the Christians Gandhi had met was overridden with negative Western trappings. One of the key strategies employed by Jews and reinforced by the teachings of Jesus was that of being a culture within a culture. Jesus' central message was about the kingdom of God. He imparted the wisdom needed for his followers to bridge the natural and the spiritual domains of reality. This is a very Jewish premise and at the heart of Jewish culture. Jesus elaborated on it when he said that we would be in the world, but not of the world. To embrace the dynamics comprising Jewish business secrets is going to involve a different way of thinking, a more creative way of thinking that results from Jewish cultural foundations. The competitive edge, the advantage we observe in Jewish business exploits, is a compatibility between their cultural and entrepreneurial foundations. This is Morris Ruddick. In our next session, I want to talk about the culture of the Jews. I've made the point of how important the Jewish approach to community is, but unless you first understand the culture, you're not going to fully grasp the Jewish community dynamic, which itself is very key to the Jewish business phenomenon.